Welcome to the Father Focus podcast.
Father Focus.
Check.
Why are we talking about this? Why does it matter?
So shaping your kids into powerful people.
Bro, let that brother fly.
Check.
All right, let's
You
go.
ready?
All right, let's go. I'm with myself.
Well, hey, everybody. Want to welcome you guys back to the Father Focus podcast. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. We appreciate you guys following our content. We hope it's been helpful to you in your journey to be an incredible father or maybe a mother. Either way, we're glad you're hanging out with us. And as always, what's up, guys? How you doing?
Doing well, man. We're just hanging out. Yeah. Just trying to. We got a lot going on around here, but we're doing well. How about you, Jeremy? You good?
I am doing amazing. The weather is beautiful, and I couldn't be happier.
Awesome.
And
Jermaine,
the better
you get
part
them-
is all my kids nobody's sick. We all just got over sickness, and we are slamming. Dude, we're healthy. Like, yes.
That is a big win
win.
in a family. And clearly Jermaine didn't get the memo because you're supposed to wear black today, Jermaine. If you're watching this by video on YouTube, you can see Jermaine missed the memo this morning.
I missed
That's
it.
okay.
All right.
That's okay.
I'm
All
used
right.
to it.
All right. So check this out. I think you guys will find this hilarious. So we just found out that at our girls' school, they have a parent pizza lunch day where parents can pay money, come to the school, and have lunch with their kids, right? I don't know if you guys ever had this with your kids before?
I mean, lunch days, yeah.
Okay, so this never happened to us before. So Christina, my wife, is super excited. So, she goes up to Brooklyn, who's our oldest by like a minute or whatever, and she says, "Brooklyn, guess what? The school is inviting all the parents to come, and me and Daddy are going to come to school and have pizza with you and your friends. Are you so excited?" And Brooklyn just puts her hands over her face and goes, "Are you serious?" She's 7 years old. 7 years old, not 15.
Are
not
you
16.
serious?
Already
And
embarrassed.
Christina's like,
Wow.
what do you mean? You don't want us to come? She's like, no, not really.
Oh,
And Christina's feelings
wow.
are so hurt. So she
Just
comes
snapped it.
upstairs and she just asked me, she says, "Why do you think Brooklyn want me to come?" And I said, "I don't know. I mean, we're pretty cool, pretty awesome. I don't know why she wouldn't want us to be there." So finally I get out of her and she's, "Yeah, just to be normal." And I'm like, "Well, what do you mean?" "I just want to hang out with my friends. I don't really want you guys to come to my lunch." And I was like, man, my kid already doesn't want to be around me. And she's
That's a
7 years
problem.
old. Like, oh
Yeah.
man, feeling like a real loser in that moment, but that's okay. That's okay. I had some ice cream and I
Wow.
felt better and all was right in the world.
Did you share it with your daughter? That's the
I had
question.
some
She
ice
have
cream.
Of course not. She doesn't get
You
any ice
ate it
cream
without
after
her.
that. No way.
What you
No
get.
way. So
that's
parents,
awesome.
if you're out there and you've had this story, you are not alone. I was also rejected, but that's all right because I think some
Like your
people like me and
master.
I'll be okay. That's right. That's right. Just like Jesus. All right, sweet. So today's topic, really excited about this. I think it's going to be really helpful because I know we all feel this tension of this concept of preparing our kids versus protecting our kids, right? And I think people are going to swing in one of two directions depending on your personality. Some people really like to be in control, right? They really like to feel like they know where their kids are, what they're doing at all times. And that's a good thing. But obviously, we know there's helicopter parents that take it to an unhealthy extreme. Literally, they're like timing out the game in the middle of the game because their kid fell on the ground, they're hurt, and they're making the coach and the referee stop. And then the other side, you have parents that literally their kids don't show up for 5 days and they're like, "Oh, you're fine." So I think the question is when it
Oof.
comes to preparing versus protecting, what is the right way to parent your kids? Like, what is the best way to strategize? So I'm going to ask you guys this question. What do you think when it comes to parenting? Do we focus on preparing them for the world outside our doors, or do we focus on protecting them? What do you guys think?
That's a good question.
Great
I mean,
question.
I saw just along this line. I saw it was a video and it was a concert, and Eminem was it was Eminem concert, and
Oh.
he was yeah, go figure. He's still making
I
music.
saw the video.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and so he's
crazy.
on the stage, and there's a dad out there with his son at an Eminem concert, and Eminem is like chewing out and cussing out this dad, and like totally
Oh,
like
dang.
just throwing shade at this dad for bringing his son to a concert. He goes, "What kind of a
Wait,
bleep dad?"
wait,
Yeah.
Eminem Eminem curses at his concert?
Yeah, but he's cursing out a guy,
No, only
like,
sometimes. Only
yeah,
sometimes. And it
only,
was a. I'm
he's
pretty sure it was a
pretty
slip
much
up.
a
It was a
saint,
slip up.
but he's like chewing out this dad and really like it's really demoralizing because he has his son there at the concert, at his concert. And I'm thinking, to me, it was like a catch 20. I'm like, are you not looking at yourself? Like
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
you're getting on to this dad for bringing him to hear your music, but isn't it the
yeah,
dad's right to bring his what he subjects his son to? Isn't his
Mm,
his choice? So it was like I had this moment of like, man, what is going on? Right? You criticize this dad for bringing his
yeah.
son, but you don't feel bad about the music that you make. So it's really one of those two. I was just like really kind of contemplating, kind of that whole situation. And in
Yeah.
regards to your question, like preparing versus protecting, I mean, for me, there was no father in my home, or men were in and out,
Mm,
and so I was exposed to a lot of things early on, like sexual things, pornography, suggestive things, very early on, like 7, 8, 9 years old, and so there was like overexposure even at times to sexual things. So
mm,
so for me, in my parenting, I mean, I try to um, protect my kids in that way, but gradually, I have a teenager now, but gradually, introducing her to things involving sexuality and things like that of that nature. But my upbringing was very much like over. It was too much over sex,
yeah, yeah.
overexposure, and
Wow.
times.
You know
So
what's interesting about that? I remember, which everybody has their own story, and I'm sure everybody remembers the first time they have seen sexual things like that. And I remember, I remember, I mean, right? And here's the thing: I remember I was probably about 8 or 9 years old in the woods, found a Ninja Turtle lunchbox. And I was with my cousin and my brother, and we're like, oh, this is awesome, Ninja Turtles. I open it up, and there's all these images. And I remember opening it up, like, what the heck is this? Like, not even understanding what is going on. And I remember my brother, he was like, I don't think we should be looking at this. And I said, I think we should. And we dumped it out, burned it. But that implanted something
right,
in me that at that moment,
yeah.
something that wasn't ready to wake up. And here's the reality of it: is we're going to innocently walk upon things that are out in the world. And so the fact of the matter is, like Jermaine was saying, I was exposed to these things. And what we should do as parents, as dads who are leading our homes, is we have to come to the deep and awesome reality that our kids are going to be exposed to things very early. And yet at the same time, we have got to protect them, talk to them about those things, and be that voice in their life. And so the world, obviously, like one of my big, I guess, something that I really am big on is protecting my kids, keeping them from the exposure of certain things so early, all the way from movies to
right,
music, whatever it could be. And so I shield them from so much. And I think that's a major goal of protecting our
Yeah.
kids. So, for instance, my son and my daughter, they're being silly. They're 8. My son's 8, daughter's 7, and they like start coming home talking about boyfriends and girlfriends. I'm like, where are you hearing this stuff? And the
Nope.
dude, hey,
Nope.
one of the insanities about it, dude, Nathan, one of the insanities about it is there are parents who are
oh
encouraging
yeah,
their kids
oh
at 7 and 8 years old. I'm like, this is insane. Like, that's insanity to
I
talk
don't see
about.
any dads ever doing that. That is definitely not something a dad would do,
It,
especially if
it
he
was
has
definitely
girls.
it was definitely a mother. So
Mhm.
I was saying that, and
No,
I'm
no
like, are
shade,
you
no
crazy?
shades to the mom.
Exactly. But
Uh,
and I want to be one of the people in I want to be the man in my home that I'm going to guard them from all of those things and
mhm.
shield them from
Yeah.
those things.
Yeah,
It's the I'm not going to hand my gun. I got multiple different weapons. This is podcast not about that. Some people are gonna love it, hate it, whatever. The fact is I'm not going to hand a gun to my son because I know it can harm him at this point. And I want to teach him, be responsible, absolutely. But there are things that if you overexpose, like Jermaine, you used the word, it's a great word, overexpose him to a gun, and if I just let him play with the gun whenever he wants, guess what? Bad things are going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Like for me, for example, my daughter, she's going to be 13, my oldest, and we have planned to take her to. There's a crisis pregnancy center here and a women's center, and she's being exposed to sexuality. We've had the talk, her and her mom, she's going through puberty, but we also are wanting to expose her in a good way. Okay, here are some examples of here are some girls that have gone through some things, right?
Yeah.
That were
Yeah.
exposed to things early, and we want to help them out. She's going to serve, she's going to help, she's going to have conversations with them. So she's getting an experience there that she can learn from. Like we're exposing
Yeah.
her with us to these things, right? That we can walk alongside and help navigate, these things, issues of the pressures of sexuality and sex and whatnot. And Jeremy, as you mentioned with the guns, for my kids and I, one of the things I have guns as well, and one of the things I've done with my children is I have these drills that we do where I'll take the clip out, make sure it's unloaded, the clip's empty. I'll ratchet it back and lock it so they can check it and make sure and they can see. I've taught them all those things, and I have showed them how a gun works. They understand that it's a tool, not a weapon, and and they also understand if they ever want to see it, all they got to do is ask, "Hey, Dad, I want to see this." We're creating this dialogue. It crosses over into these issues as well.
Mhm.
We don't have to protect them as much if we remove the curiosity. So I removed the
Mm.
curiosity by leaving the gun out, and I've done these drills where they know that if they see a gun out somewhere, if they're at a friend's house and a gun is out, they're to immediately go get their siblings and immediately come to their parents. They don't yell, they
Mm.
don't point fingers, they don't make a big scene. Because they leave immediately, go get their siblings, and they come find us. They say, "Dad, there's a gun in here." And so we've taught
Mm.
them that for gun safety, but also they can see a gun if they ever want to see it to remove the curiosity, right? Most
Mhm.
shootings happen
Right.
when the gun is not properly placed somewhere or the kids are
Yep.
curious and playing with it. So we've removed all that curiosity and we've engaged with them. So in the same way, we're doing the same thing as it relates to sexuality, protection
Yeah.
versus
Yeah.
um, preparation. So
I think you're actually
Yeah.
making a really good point because I know for me growing up, and I don't know how it was for you guys, the generation I grew up in that my parents kind of were taught about parenting was, I would say it heavily leans in the direction of protection. There were things I wasn't allowed to
Right.
watch because they weren't overtly Christian.
Yeah.
And
Snoopy.
Smurfs.
Smurfs.
Snoopy, Captain Planet. I mean, literally, I could write a book with all the things I wasn't allowed to
Captain
watch.
Planet.
We
But
didn't do Halloween. We did Celebration of Life.
No
I was
Power
basically a
Rangers for you,
different
bro. You were no
disciple.
Power Ranger
No
Celebration.
guy?
Power Rangers.
Oh my
I mean,
gosh.
literally, like I was like,
Oh.
I am a loser for Jesus, really. Not by choice even. And
Oh, good.
it really what it did, even though I know the intention was good, it actually made me more curious about what they were protecting me from than me wanting to run from it. I was like, I actually want to know more what's going on out there because you say it's so bad. That's curiosity is built in us
Yeah.
naturally.
Mm.
You know what
Yeah,
I mean? And
yeah.
so it almost seemed like in the beginning you guys were kind of leaning in that protection, way, which I think we have to do. It's not either
Absolutely.
or, it's a
Right.
both
Yep.
and, but
Right.
it made me think of the example of a fire drill. When you're a kid, you remember when you guys were little in elementary school, and I don't know if they did this at your school, but they brought in like this firehouse that you had to go through
Yep.
it. The alarms
Yep.
were going off, and it was kind of like a simulated fire situation. You had to go through the whole thing. It was kind of unnerving. It was really loud, really tight spaces, right? Like it wasn't something, it was fun because I was a guy, but at the same time, I was like, dang, this is pretty jacked up. Like, I can't believe they're letting me do this in
Dramatic.
school. But they did it on purpose in case I was ever in that situation. I knew how to respond.
Yep.
And I wonder if, as parents, we are as intentional about exposing our kids so that when they actually encounter these things in real life, they know what to do versus so much focusing on the protecting side that we
Yeah.
literally leave them to their own devices when they fall in these situations. I think I heard something that said the average age now, which blows my mind, that a kid views pornography like 7 or 8 years old. Like it's very, very young. We're talking about like first
Yeah.
grade kids.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
It's crazy.
we can't wait until they tell us that they saw something or heard
Right.
something
Mhm.
to have those conversations. We need to know and anticipate what's going on in their world and speak into that now. And I really respect, I've heard stories about some parents who intentionally show their kids things, maybe before they're even fully ready to understand, in a way that's so helpful that it brings their kids up to another level of maturity. And that really inspires
Mm,
me to be that type of parent, you know?
yeah.
So it kind of sounds like what you guys are saying is it's not really one or the other, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's
So
good.
then my question would be, because we all have kids in different ages. Mine are 7. I know you guys have some older than me. How do you know when it's time to prepare, and how do you know when it's time to protect? I'll give you an example. The sex talk, right? As awkward as that is, ideally, we would be the one to have that conversation with our kids, right? My wife's going to talk to our daughters. If when we have sons, I'll talk to my sons about that. But like
Yeah.
for you guys, I'll give you that example and then I'll let you just kind of talk. When do you prepare? When do you protect?
Yeah. That is a great question, and obviously, I think it is vital. Uh, the goal is both, and we start off in protection mode. Obviously, not necessarily revealing to our kids everything, but we are going to prepare them in order to protect them from certain things. And so, part of the preparation would look different. And I think it is a little bit arbitrary, based off of your child's. Maturity level.
Mhm.
So each kid has a different temperament. Each child has a different, like, I have 5 kids, and all of them are beautifully different. And it's
Yeah.
amazing. They all have great strengths, and they're just different. And so my son, he just turned 8 years old, and I gave him a knife. And it's not like this, it's not anything impressive. I think it costs like $12. And so give him this knife, and he's able to have it and, be a part of it. But you know what I'm not going to give him is I'm not going to give him a broadhead. Like I have a compound bow, I like to shoot it. But I have this razor sharp arrowhead, and he's asked to see it, and I'm like, dude, not a chance, because I do know at 8 years old he is curious, he's silly, he'll fall on the ground with a broadhead. Even if it's in his hand, it's going to slice his hand up. So I think part of the answer there is has to do with maturity, and then the situation. Like, all the situations are different. So I'm not going to talk to my 8-year-old about sex right now. It's just not going to happen because he's not
Yeah.
ready for that yet. There's no reason to him. Can I talk to him about the dangers of a knife? Absolutely. Do I want him to handle a knife? I absolutely do. Do I want to
Yeah.
let him shoot a BB gun? Absolutely. Do I want to tell him, like, he comes home? I never talked to him about boyfriends and girlfriends, like I said a minute ago. And so then he comes home, and then they're silly. And then him and his sister talking about how they're going to be boyfriend and girlfriend. I'm like, all right, first of all, that's extremely weird. We're not from that part of the country.
Whoa.
Right. And so,
Yeah.
I got to explain to them what it is, and start, then I'm going to start preparing them for that kind of conversation. And they're like, oh, okay, well, yeah, you can't marry your sister. Right. So, yeah, absolutely. I think maturity level is probably key.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think maturity level is very important. And that's the thing, is that if you're having these conversations with your kids, the other conversations we're talking about, you're wanting to create dialogue with your kid. That's the most important thing. You want to
Mm,
create connection and connectivity.
yeah.
That's the ultimate thing. You want to create conversations. You want to create a relationship with your kids. And so when we talk about protecting versus preparing, as Jeremy was saying, maturity level is very important, and it depends on, again, like, I'm having combos with my older daughter that I'm not having with my
Right.
younger children, right?
2-year-old. Yeah.
Yeah, we're not having the same conversations, and Proverbs talks about, or sorry, Song of Solomon, not awakening desires before their time. And
Yes.
sometimes if we're not careful, we can unintentionally, or even with good intent, or even from a lack of being intentional, they can be exposed to things, and things can be awakened before their time. And so,
Yep.
fire is good in the fireplace, but take that fire and put it in the center of a room, it burned the whole house down. So fire isn't bad.
Mm,
So our kids are understanding that the fire isn't bad, but it's in the right place, in the right
right.
context. And so we're
Yeah.
creating a lot of conversations with our kids where we can continue to have dialogue and discussions.
That's good.
It makes sense. I think when it comes to some things like tangible things, it's a little bit simpler. Some parents are going to lean more towards the protection side. Like you said, you gave your 8-year-old son a knife. I could see a lot of parents saying, whoa, 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 that's way too young. He shouldn't have a knife till he's driving a vehicle, right? But you understand that. But I
Right.
think, but I think, you teach a kid how a knife works, you teach them some basic principles, and
Yep.
most kids they understand the concept. But there's some things that are more philosophical. Like let's just
Right.
take sexuality, for example. It's not as simple to know when to have the right conversation and what information should be talked about in the first
Yep.
conversation. So there's
Right.
probably dads here that are like, man, I have a son. I've had parents tell me that when I was a youth pastor. Man, I don't know what to say. I don't know what's too much information. So, like, what advice do you guys give in those more philosophical? There's so many concepts about sexuality floating out in the world right now, right? So many sexual identities and orientations and all these things. And the kids are going to hear this stuff. So it's like, where do you start when it comes to that specific topic? What's like the first few things you would want to say to your son when you're having that first conversation? Or maybe if moms are listening, what's that first conversation that you're going to have with your daughter? Like, what do you think that looks like, sounds like? Maybe you guys have had that conversation, kind of talk it through a little bit.
Yeah. Uh, I don't mind going first. Obviously, my kids are not even they're not there yet. But I was a youth pastor, and I have had those conversations with parents as well. Every parent, it doesn't matter who you are, every parent is going to deal with the sexual appetites that have been given by God. Let's just remind
Yeah.
ourselves. Um, and they
Hey,
have to deal with that. Yeah, yeah, and it's good in its right place. And every appetite, C.S. Lewis in Mere Christianity, I believe it was, talks about the appetites and how all those appetites are good. They just need, like you're saying, Jermaine, they have their right place.
Mhm.
So sex has its right place. Hunger has its right place. You can't have those desires at any point at any time. So part of it, to answer your question as far as what and how, again, I kind of would lean back a little bit on what I said a little while ago, as far as like the maturity level. You have got to trust, number one, that you are knowing your child. You've got to know them, and but more than knowing your child, you've got to know the Lord, and really walk in a way that you're having a heart to raise those children in a way to fear God, and that's going to bring a lot of just initial comforts right there. Like, okay, is what I'm about to tell my kid going to please the Lord? Okay, so if your kid is, let's say 13 years old, and Jermaine, you can speak to this because you do have a 13-year-old, right? She's 13.
Yeah, she'll be 13
That you
in a
said?
few in the month.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So my oldest girl's 7. So I'm like not there talking with them yet. Um, but I think it is very important, number one, to go slow. And we would talk about, principles of, like, I would go slow and kind of feel them out. Like, what do you know? And try and build trust and build a relationship there. And then
yeah.
and then start to expose things, especially if you've seen that they've already, like, a lot of the conversations I had was, oh, my kid's watching porn. It's like, okay, well then the cat's out the bag. If they've already seen it, like, go ahead and have the conversation and be real with them and tell them about your struggles. Tell them about what's going on and how God can redeem them. Tell them about the pitfalls, and what all that was made for. I'm not talking about porn. I'm talking about sex. It was made to glorify God. And
Yeah,
so, and obviously, Satan and the enemies of our soul want to corrupt all those desires. And he certainly
yeah.
has.
I think
Yeah.
it becomes difficult, for parents, you're asking the question, when is the right time? I think parents also struggle because they're struggling internally, right?
Mm.
Yeah, I did a little survey on the spot. We were doing Nathan, you were with me. We were serving together at a church, and we were having this ministry meeting, breakfast. We had a men's conference. It was awesome. And then following, it was so awesome. And we decided to have this weekend event, men's breakfast, where we would meet, go through this book together and have discussion. And there's a couple hundred men in the room. And I remember asking the question, I asked two questions. I said, when it comes to the birds and the bees, how many of you, your parents told you about the birds and the bees or had sexuality? I mean, out of hundreds of men, maybe 2 or 3 hands went up.
Yeah.
Then I asked, how many of you heard about it from someone else, a friend, and it was
Right.
bad, it wasn't good.
Yep.
All every hand in the room went up. And so there's all this negative connotations revolving around sexuality or sex. there's all the shame that even in our own lives, when we talk about sexuality, that we can kind of carry. And that mucks up kind of like it helps like our, our perspective. Like, when do we talk? How do we talk?
Yeah.
And there's all this fear around it, and instead of looking at it from the biblical perspective, as Jeremy was saying, it's beautiful. God made it, God ordained it. Adam and Eve were naked and unashamed, and so it's redeeming sexuality, redeeming these birthrights, taking them back from the world,
Yeah.
and kind of helping our kids navigate through it. So again, to your question, I think a lot, oftentimes we got to look at ourselves and say, okay, how am I regarding this issue? Is there any shame that I'm carrying?
Mm.
What fears and inhibitions
That's
do I
good.
have innately in
Yeah.
myself?
That's good. Yeah, that's super helpful. That evaluation, that could be the reason you're avoiding the conversation.
Mm.
And man, there's so much freedom in Jesus, so that you don't have to walk in shame with your kids. But it sounds like kind of what you guys are saying is go back to those foundational truths for those of us that are followers of Jesus. Obviously, that's the Bible. We look at the scriptures as a blueprint for how to live, and so many ideas and concepts that we embrace as humanity. God has spoken about those things, and he does have clear answers. But if you're not a Christian, you're listening, there's probably great books out there to help you have these initial conversations that are in an understandable way for your kid, where they don't walk away more confused, but it's actually helpful in a basic concept. But I think it's start with what is the most important thing you want your kid to understand about that concept, and then go from
Mhm.
there and build on that.
Yeah.
So no, that's really helpful. All right. All right. We're going to tell on ourselves for a little bit, kind of wrap up this episode. All right. Um,
Oh gosh.
Yeah,
so
you
for
wanna
you
tell on
guys
yourself,
as
lead us?
for you
Yeah,
guys
you
as
tell on
dads,
yourself
Tell on
first.
yourself. We're gonna listen.
I'll go last. I'll go last.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
hosting today. All right. So I'm not in the hot seat. You guys are.
All
Um,
right.
all right.
I
So
got it.
as dads, do you guys find that you lean more towards being overprotective, like maybe a little bit too intense, maybe a little bit too restrictive? Or do you guys find yourself more on the other side of the ditch, maybe too laid back, too chill, maybe allow your kids to do a little too much? Like, where do you guys find yourselves, and why do you think that is?
Yeah. Wow. I would the what and the why. Okay. So yes,
Tell
what
tell the truth.
is
Tell the truth, Jeremy. All right. Don't sugarcoat it.
um I'm not gonna sugarcoat it because it's really not that difficult. Okay, so I definitely, without a doubt, especially because I have young kids. So my oldest is 8, my youngest is 10 months. My wife just told me today. So there's
He told
very
you.
young kids there,
She
and
told
so
him.
He
she
told him.
did. I
10
thought he
months.
was
You
like
didn't
7,
remember.
8
You
months.
don't have a clue.
I thought I do. I'm good with dates. I'll
He
just
knows the
say that.
months, the hours, and the
I,
days of how old
I d-
your
yeah.
child is.
So I definitely, and at this point in my life, lean towards being a protector. Just from experiences that I've had in the past, I literally have had guns pulled on me, and so I have been, part of fighting and abuse, in the sense of like seeing people like jumped and beat up. And so I've always kind of had this thing of like a protective narrative about me, like I do want to defend people. And so with my kids, obviously because they're so young, I do lean on, the natural thing is to protect them from things that are harming. I'm always trying to see 2 or 3 steps ahead of them. However, if any of y'all know me, I like y'all would probably think I'm lying when you're saying that, because I do. I'm also creating absolute animals, right? Like I literally, like one of my friends told me, he's like, Jeremy, dude, all your kids are going to be adrenaline junkies through what I put them through. Like from like before they could walk, I'm throwing them so high in the air. Like my goal was to get their feet, you know, 10 feet or higher. Like the bottom of them would be 10 feet or higher, throwing them as infants, throwing them in the air. I've always caught all of them, never dropped any.
Christina
So
has literally talked about that multiple times, about how nervous it made her every time you would just chuck your
every
kids in the air.
female says that. I chuck
Like,
y'all's too, man.
like
No,
literally. Well, that's
no.
what
She
she
might
said.
kill me.
Christina's not
Jeremy's
gonna.
not picking up our kids.
No, I know that.
Dude,
Christina's
I
not
know.
having it.
So,
That's
but that's
not
the
happening.
thing. I think there is a thing, like I do want them to go out. I'll let them go. Like I said, I gave my kid a knife. He's got a little BB gun, and I let them go out. But I am like wanting to be in control of the environment when
Sure.
he's playing with the knife, when he's playing with the gun, or using, whatever you want to say it. So I am very, very protective, and I'm keeping them from harm. Like if we're playing basketball near the front of our house, got a street out there, I'm like always looking for cars. So I am protective, but I don't think I'm protective in the sense of some overly protective mothers that we would say in a negative way. Like I want to give them freedom. So then to answer the question, I guess more fully, is that as they get older, I know I'm going to, I am already releasing what I'm allowing them to do and what I'm allowing them not to do. That would be how I would answer that question. Hopefully that
Okay.
was the why and
Yeah.
the what, the what and the why.
You know, I agree. I think I lean more
And I
towards
will. Sorry, last thing.
you're
I will
fine.
throw your children. I will throw
No,
them.
you will not.
You will.
No,
You will. You will fight me. But
yeah,
if they're
yeah.
if they're near, they're going high. I'm just kidding.
I lean more towards protection as well. I think with my upbringing, as I've shared a little bit about it, no father, different men in and out, and just it was so turbulent at times, so inconsistent. I like to have the peace and have stability is very important to me. So I can lean that way. Again, not trying to be overprotective, but have worked in youth ministry and ministry for a while, and just stories about the pain and suffering of people. I
Yeah.
don't like seeing people suffer. Like I'm the guy who picks dogs up. Like if a dog's like running around somewhere in the middle of the street and it's got a tag on it, I'm the guy that's going to go pick it up and like call the owner and say, "Hey, your dog's in the street." That's just kind of my personality.
That's why,
Um,
Jermaine, show 'em all those bite marks on your arm from all
yeah,
those dogs.
whatever. If it's a rabid dog, if it's crazy, no, that doesn't happen. Um, you know,
Oh man.
uh, seriously, that's just kind of my personality, and I want people to feel safe. I want kids to feel safe. I spent time with both of your kids, and I want them to feel safe. I want them to have a blast. And so I read a story a while back. I can't remember her name. She talked about like you're raising kids like being like lifting like a kite. You got this string, and you want the kite to fly higher, but you're loosening up the string a little bit and gradually loosening up the string so the kite can soar. You're not controlling the kite, but you want the kite to soar, and to soar correctly, you have to, still hold on to the string and navigate the kite. And that's kind of how I
Mm,
envision it is just, gradually loosening up the string so my kids can soar. But I do lean more towards the protection just because of, in my own upbringing,
yeah.
there's just things. And so
Yeah.
that would be my,
No, it makes sense. I think I would assume most parents probably lean that way because fear is a powerful motivator. And there's that instinct as a parent to protect your kids because we realize there's a lot of danger in the world. So I imagine, but I think moms have a tendency to maybe be a little bit more protective than dads are, right? You even see that in the animal kingdom. Mom's the one that saves kid, dad's the one that leaves, right? But I would say for me, it's actually the opposite. And probably also it's because the way I was raised was that I think a lot of times I felt almost too restricted in the sense of my parents were so afraid of me turning into a bad kid.
A
Or
criminal.
I remember one time, yeah, I mean, literally, I got suspended one day
Nathan,
from
you were a
school in sixth
criminal.
grade. I was the worst, man.
no,
Watch out, I'm coming for you. Um, I got suspended from school for one day because I got a few detentions, whatever. I'm not saying it was great, but it wasn't a big deal. My
Probably for
mom
being late.
legit.
what,
Well,
what?
back then it wasn't my fault because I didn't drive, so I'm sure that
Oh,
was
okay.
part
All
of it.
right.
But
All
but
right.
regardless, my mom grounded me in my room for an entire month. Not a day, not a week, not 2
A
weeks, not
month.
3 weeks, 1 whole month. And you're like, "Oh, that wasn't too bad. You probably had like your TV and your video games." Oh no, I had nothing. My brothers were not allowed to come in the room at any point and hang out with me.
Oh my gosh.
Like,
Wow.
literally, that's all I did, and
Miss
it was just kind of
Tony.
I know, if you're listening to this, mom, all right, you're paying
Love
for my
you.
counseling. I do love you, mom,
You
but
never.
I just think, like, for me, I think what my parents did, and I think what every good parent does, they try to create boundaries for their kids, right?
Right.
"Hey,
Yeah, guardrails.
inside this
Yep.
box, there's safety." But as your kid grows, the boundaries need to grow with them. And I don't know if we realize this at
Absolutely.
times,
Yep.
but sometimes our boundaries are actually the restriction on allowing our kids to grow.
Yeah.
I
That's
don't know if
good.
you realize that. And I
Mhm.
think there's that other tendency that we need to acknowledge to say, hey, listen, my kid might need to learn through failing. I watched something the other day. I thought it was really interesting. They said, don't stop your kid doing dangerous things carefully. And there was like videos of these kids on like these motorbikes, like jumping into those like big ball pits with like the foam in there, and like kids doing backflips into things, like things that could hurt your kids if they didn't know what they were doing, but they were learning in a safe environment. For some people, it probably makes them feel uncomfortable. They shouldn't be doing that. But how are you going to grow if you're always controlled
Yeah.
and everything
Yeah.
is controlled for you? And so for me, I think my goal, and hopefully I don't learn the hard way, is I want my girls to feel confident. And the only way they're going to feel confident is to do things on their own. So I'm a big believer in the love and logic concept of teaching your kids through natural consequences. So there's times where I realize my kids are going to do something that they're going to regret. And I know they're not going to die from it. And I'm not going to have to take them to the hospital. And I say, okay, you can try it. We'll see how it goes. I heard a story about a pastor who his son was standing on the roof of his house. I don't know if you guys heard this story. And the son said, hey, dad, watch me. I jump off the roof. And the mom said, don't you dare think about jumping off that roof. And the dad said, go for it, son. And he watched his son leap off the roof of his house onto the ground and break his arm and they had to take him to the hospital. But his concept was so powerful. He said, I never want my son to be afraid to jump and take a risk. And I was just like this mind-blowing moment for me. Isn't it our job as parents to continue to encourage and challenge our kids to dream bigger, to do more, that our ceiling would be their floor? So I think there is that element of maybe pushing them out there before they're ready, and maybe sometimes allowing them to do things that makes it a little uncomfortable so that they grow. And so I'll kind of close with that concept. I think we're good at the protect side. If you're not, care about your kids and make sure their well-being is high priority for you. But for most of us, I would say, is it possible that anything we're doing as a parent is actually restricting our kids from growing? Another thing I'd say is, for us that are followers of Jesus, parenting is not all on us. We have the Holy Spirit, we have God on our side. And so we should trust him that we're not the only ones speaking in their life. And just because we're not around doesn't mean they're not being protected and prepared. And so pray, trust God, teach your kids, prepare well. But at the end of the day, trust that the work you put in is going to pay off in the long run. And don't be a helicopter parent. Let your kids watch Smurfs. Let your kids watch Captain Planet and Power Rangers. All right.
Maybe not Smurfs.
Everybody's like, "Who's Captain
Okay.
Planet?"
Yeah, I'm
Old
aging
man.
myself right now. I don't e
So,
I
well,
hate
you're
kids
so
shows, I don't
old.
watch them. But, I know. All right, let's stop talking about it. Anyway, but I hope that helps you guys today. Don't the point I think we're trying to make, kinda wrapping up, don't fall into a ditch, right? Try
Either
to
one.
hold
That's
that
right.
tension
Yep.
between both and allow your boundaries and rules to continue to lax so your kids can grow. Man, I hope this helps you guys as you walk this out as parents. We're so thankful that you guys are hanging out with us, listen to us. We would love for you guys to share this content with other people. Our goal really is to be helpful and to help you parent on purpose, to be intentional about the way you raise your kids. And that's our goal. So we'd love for you guys to subscribe. We're on all podcast channels, Spotify and iTunes. And we'd love for you guys to leave a comment as well if this helped you. And if there's content you want us to cover, let us know as well. So hope you guys have a killer week. Keep being amazing parents, fathers, and mothers. And we will see you guys soon. Peace out.